Hey, John Gilroy here. We are recording this interview from the Washington Convention Center, and we're talking to Salesforce executives about how they can impact the federal government. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I'll be your moderator. In the studio face-to-face is Mia Jordan. She's the industry advisor for Salesforce. Mia, how are you?
I'm fantastic, John. Good seeing you again.
We just didn't go down on 9th Street and grab someone out of a 7-Eleven. Mia's got actual experience here. You were a federal CAO 2 times, USDA and federal student aid. So you've been down this road, haven't you?
I've been down it.
Good. So I'm going to have some questions. We're going to talk about Agentic AI. And you're young, I'm old. When I look at the last 6 or 7 months, what I see is a big change. You know, Malcolm Gladwell will talk about a tipping point, you know. You can say it's a sea change, or maybe some people will say inflection point. Mm-hmm. So last 6 months, what's going on here? Was it something in the water?
Almost. I think 2 things kind of converged at the same time. One, there was already an appetite for AI, right, before this administration came in. And then the administration arrived, it set its priorities, but it also, I think, opened up the gate a little wider in terms of the kind of technology that could be leveraged by the federal government. And also, I think, the pace that they were willing to drive in order to get new tools in the hands of government at the same time of, consolidating and shrinking the government workforce. So I think that's given license and permission to technology leaders, to business and program owners across government to, move with urgency and to go from concept to production as quickly as possible.
In June, I'm going to a wedding with my wife up in Minnesota, and I'm sure if I sat at a wedding and talked to someone, they'd say, yeah, the federal government's probably 5 years behind with AI adoption. However, breaking news, Mia Jordan reporting from the front, not true.
Not true. Actually, that statistic, I think if you look it up, the government has had AI, and let's define that really quickly because I think people don't think certain capabilities are in fact under the AI umbrella. First and foremost, automation is actually a byproduct of AI. Predictive analytics, which the government has been using for a long time, about a decade or so, is a part of AI. And now we're in this generative AI space. So I just want us to be conscious and aware that government has been doing this for about a decade. And it's exciting, though, to see the uptick in generative AI adoption, which has hit us all, I think, taken everything by storm so far.
There's a press release that came out this morning from IDC and talked about some interesting characteristics of artificial intelligence and agentic use. And it says, one of the challenges is with shortage of skilled personnel. So how can Salesforce handle an agency that wants to make these big, bold moves, but maybe limited in terms of HR?
Well, we believe in AI with a human in the loop, right? And even though there may be a limited number of staff, the way our platform is designed with features such as like Next Best Action, which prompts the human to take a certain action, right? Say they're a brand new employee and they've only been on staff for 6 months. Things like that can be a real force multiplier, right, in terms of getting work done. But also training agents on FAQs and knowledge articles to be able to answer commonly asked questions, either internally or by the public, is something that we see a lot of interest in government. I want to use Department of Labor as an example. They are going to be launching an agent called DOLA in the summertime, and the DOLA is going to sit on the front page of the Department of Labor's website.
Whoa.
And so think about, right, have you ever filed an unemployment claim or asked questions about, I'm unemployed, what do I do next? That used to be a pretty painstaking process, and so I'm excited to see that come live.
I think what the overall goal is that citizens across the United States, they go to Amazon, they buy shoes, or they buy a shirt at Joseph A. Bank or something, and they want that same experience at labor or at the tax IRS people.
Yes.
So they're trying to get that. However, easy to talk about, hard to implement.
Well, look, I think where we are right now is that government understands that its constituents and citizens are not judging it by their experience at another federal agency. Just what you said. I just got off my phone ordering something on Amazon, or I just booked a plane ticket, right? Some airline.com. The bottom line is that government is understanding that they have to create experiences with their constituents that liken that to the private industry. And they now have commercial grade technology at the FedRAMP high level that allows them to do that. And that's the win here. Because for so long, John, quite frankly, we were wanting the technology, but the fact was that we couldn't get it, right? Or the parity wasn't there between what was in the commercial sector and the private sector in government.
At that wedding in Minnesota, they're not going to understand how important FedRAMP High is. But that is a big deal. In this town, if you can walk in with that as your first message, all of a sudden doors open, don't they?
Don't they? Yes, they do.
They're good. Let's talk about automation and the situation many federal agencies find themselves in. So let's say you're an agency and maybe your staff has been reduced. Maybe there's some leadership gaps. Maybe there's some problems in being able to adapt. So how can low-code tools like Agentic AI automation help while still maintaining oversight and accountability?
Well, wait a minute. Now, wait a minute, John. Now, I don't want our audience to believe that I'm going to suggest that we can replace a leader with low-code, no-code tools, right? Accountability and responsibility is still a real thing. However, Salesforce has made a pretty significant investment into what's called public sector solutions. And so that's where essentially Salesforce has audited, what's on the platform that the public sector uses, and essentially created this portfolio of applications that agencies can adopt that's about a 70% solution, therefore allowing them to get to market, right, in air quotes, very, very quickly. So low code, no code being an accelerator in that there's pre-configured solutions. The same is true for our agents now, right? Whether it be agents for recruiting, agents for benefits, agents for grants. We are thinking about all of those things because, one, we understand that there's a shortage of skills. Two, agencies don't necessarily have as much budget as they used to. And three, they still have constituents to serve. So our investment is really, really critical at a time like this.
I was at the keynote this morning and I listened to Kendall. I walked up to a guy named Dave Ray, had a chat with him, and I said, hey, I'm doing a couple of interviews this afternoon. What do you think I should focus on? He said, it's all about the data, man. It's all about the data. That's all you got to talk about. Don't talk about anything else. And when you think about it, there's so much data in the federal government, and what do you trust, what don't you trust, and how it's governed. And I think the platform that Salesforce provides is this ability to say, yes, you can experiment here, and it will be under the whole rubric of governance.
Listen, so let's start here with, most of the applications that our customers are building, they are putting their customer data in our applications, in our platform. And so the treasure trove of what agencies are using to make decisions, how they're evaluating decisions based on those customers is in our platform. And then there's all of these investments that have happened in different data tools, which are worthy investments. But you still some kind of way want a mechanism to bring all of that together in order to make even better decisions, lower your risk, lower lawsuits, the incidence of lawsuits because a wrong decision was made. And what the Salesforce platform does now with Informatica, our recent acquisition, is that it is allowing our customers to understand the context of the data, the lineage of the data, when was it created, who created it, how many times has it been used, so that when they have desires to be an agentic enterprise, that they have that auditability of the data, which they don't have right now, right? And that is really, I think, the most crucial aspect of where we are and why Dave Ray said, talk about the data.
A lot of people look at large language models, and it's a magic box. You type something in, and it tells you this. Types in something, and tells you that. And I think that's not good enough. That's not good enough at the Pentagon. It's not good enough in many agencies. And so this whole idea of observability is one thing, but the origin of the data this is it's a key thing, because you can go back and you can document that, because a general may come to you and say, well, Mia, show me exactly where you got this number from. And you can say, well, here, sir, bang, right there. Right. So the origin of the data, that's why Informatica is a real nice piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. The way government operates today, right, when there are bad decisions that are made, what happens? They come back and they audit. They audit the process. They audit the data that was used. They audit the individual that made the decision, right? All of those things happen today. If we're going to move even faster, we want mechanisms to do that. And the fact that you can now even audit our agents in the platform is, I think, that's something that customers aren't asking about enough. Oh, well, what is the visibility on that? When can I do it? How often can I do it? And what kind of guardrails can I add or then remove from the agents that I deploy once I get to a level of trust?
One of the concepts about data that people just may not understand is that there may be duplicative data through different agencies, and they're paying for that data being stored in 3 or 4 different agencies. Then Mia walks in and goes, well, let's have one source of truth, and we can provide a platform to allow the agencies to use. It just seems like that's how a for-profit organization would be managed. Why have this duplication everywhere?
That's exactly what our stack of technology is allowing for with Informatica now, but also with Data Cloud. It allows us to harmonize the data so that our customers in that specific use case that you named can arrive at what we call a golden record, right? That I have 5 John Gilroys in my system, but this is actually the one that I want to use, right? Based on these attributes and all the different data elements that come with that particular record.
Let's go back to Minnesota. Okay, so I'm sure if you walked into Target, okay, there's a big company up in Minnesota, there's companies up there, and they may look at some large language models and try to implement them. In fact, Kendall Collins talked about this morning. Many times, good old-fashioned commercial companies are having a tough time with deploying AI effectively. In fact, the numbers are like 75% doesn't get deployed effectively. So how can Salesforce deploy AI effectively in this complex environment?
Well, we understand, again, where the source of our customers' data is. Most of this data lives internally within their enterprise. While they have the option to go out and use a publicly available LLM, the most valuable data is already in-house. And most of our customers actually start there. And that's really important because, one, they understand the context of that data rather than pulling data from outside, from the internet directly. But having the choice, right, the option to still go and use LLMs in the appropriate case still remains a viable option. I can't speak for Target and their methodology, but they should probably call us.
Hey, in Washington, D.C., I'll go to that wedding and hand out your business card to me. How's that sound?
I like that, huh? That was on the fly.
Okay, I'm on the plane to Minnesota, okay? And I'm talking, hey, I interviewed Mia from Salesforce, and they'll say, well, John, give you an example of the federal government. And I'll say, let me call Mia real quick. Right. And so give me an example of how AI has been used here in an agency, just a typical agency, typical application.
Sure. Well, there are a number of ways that the agencies are using them. This morning we had a gentleman that was talking about research, right? And the fact that they have, the public volunteers to participate in medical research. How they're using our platform and ultimately how they will use our platform to make that process more seamless in terms of how they engage with them, how they keep them updated throughout the trial that they have decided to participate is one example. Another example probably is my favorite is I'll harken back to a year ago to the city of Kyle, Texas. John, you may have heard of Agent Kyle. You know all about Kyle?
No, I don't.
Okay. Agent Kyle sits on their website, and Agent Kyle is answering questions 24 hours, 7 days a week But the really cool thing about Agent Kyle is that while it is trained on their FAQs and their knowledge articles, they have done something that I think a lot of people don't think about, which is, a state agency or local government agency has many different websites where information is displayed. And how Agent Kyle can go and look at those other websites as well. So if there's a street closure on Main Avenue, or there's a water break on Sunset Boulevard, right, the agent can respond to those things in real time. And those are the kinds of examples that we want to continuously share over and over, so that people understand kind of the art of the possible of how they should be using this technology.
So if we have a situation in Dallas where there's a road closed and a person can go to a website and get information, it's not just I-95 closed at 9 o'clock in the morning. It gives much more information about that, especially for specific use cases. Maybe it's got something to do with a FEMA trailer. Maybe it's got something to do with a tax claim. Maybe it's got something to do with labor or something. So it's in fact, at the keynote this morning, they did some demonstrations from Penn Fed and from different organizations, and it was eerily human. I'm not saying it was human, but it answered all the questions very effectively. It didn't give a superficial answer.
Right. The ability to reason, right, is what we're dealing with, right? We're not dealing with a bot that could only give answers to questions that was previously written for it. The fact that it can, if you go to, Agent Kyle's website and you're looking for permitting or licensing data, but then you ask, what the weather is, and if that information is on one of their websites that it's connected to, it can give you that answer too. That's the part of, the difference between agentic AI and like what we have been accustomed to with bots has changed so dramatically. And that I think people are becoming a lot more comfortable with.
Let's look at this transition taking place over the next few years. So it's going to have an impact on the workforce in the federal government. So how do you think the federal workforce will evolve to meet this new transition, this new change?
It's literally happening under our feet, which is a good thing. Because while the federal government has been reduced in size, what we do see, I think, are glimpses and evidence of the kind of transformation of not just the physical footprint of the federal government, but the culture, too, right? A kind of, fail-fast culture, number one, but also a culture that is having to shift because technology has shifted under their feet, making their roles, I think, need to be redefined in ways that haven't been thought of before. And what I mean by that is, look at any kind of private sector organization that adopts AI at an enterprise scale, and there's a bit of like shrinking of layers, right? It becomes a lot less hierarchical and it begins to flatten a bit. And I think that's a good thing, because the way that information can be shared now because of AI having access to a number of different systems across an organization is where I think you begin to see an organization a lot more smart, a lot more aware, and a lot more productive, because before everything was stovepiped. So that's where I think we're going to see that shift begin to happen, where it doesn't feel like 6 different businesses operating separately under one roof.
You've had success in managing federal workers in a couple different areas here, and I always like to ask about the elements of success. And so what elements need to be in place, from a change management perspective to succeed with deploying AI across an agency? What guidelines can you give our listeners?
3 pillars. I've been talking about these all day today. Leadership. Right? Leaders being at the helm when it comes to the adoption of AI, them not being afraid to use it, leverage it, showcase it in front of their staff, I think is really, really important, right? I understand that, ground up adoption is important, but AI now is one of those things that everyone is going to be able to use. It doesn't have to just be a grants program, right, that needs AI because they need to operate faster. This is a tool that's going to be in everyone's hands. The second thing is really making a concerted effort that while everyone has some basic AI education, the need to understand how AI is going to be used for a contracting officer versus an HR analyst, right? And how they're going to leverage the technology to do their work is really, really important. And so there does need to be more resources pointed towards that. And the third thing is what I think people think about, but I don't know necessarily that they're leading or start from here, which is reimagining the work when you want to leverage predictive or generative AI or basic automation. That it's not enough to just slap AI on top of a broken workflow, right, and expect something better to come out of the other end, right? Understanding the data and the touch points and where you need different types of technology along that workflow is incredibly important. So being unafraid to redesign the work and to disrupt the current state of the org chart so that work happens more easily. I said that here.
Disruption. There's a guy who's disrupted a lot of businesses here. His name is Jensen Twang. I listened to an interview with him, NVIDIA guy. And the interviewer said, okay, Jensen, what should 18-year-olds study in college? What kind of training can they have to be able to adapt to this rapidly changing agentic AI? So my question to you is, what are the most in-demand skills for government agencies? What skills should they develop in their people so they can not be left behind at this leap with agentic AI?
Listen, I have 3 children, but I have 2 children still in school that are 11 and 14. And the thing that I right now can't stress enough is critical thinking skills, right? Because the AI models that we're playing with right now out in the public sound and feel very confident, don't they?
They do, but they can be wrong.
But they can be wrong. And so if you're not a critical thinker, right? If you're not a person that is willing to test, where did this come from? Show me the source, and be able to challenge that based on information that you know to be true. It doesn't matter how many data skills you have, right? It doesn't matter how many degrees you have, right? You need to be able to think critically. Because as AI continues to advance, you have to be thinking all the time, I understand the data where it is, but this is still an imperfect solution that I'm using, and therefore I should use with caution.
Jensen said, well, maybe they should study English because no one's going to be coding. They'll be writing complicated sentences to have AI do. So this is a variation on critical thinking, isn't it? Is it, do you study logic? I don't know what to tell 18-year-olds now. I think you study where your passion is. I don't think that changes. But I do think how AI is going to be used in that particular discipline, right, where you can become a subject matter expert in that discipline is still going to be necessary, right? I'm still always going to rely on a plumber to come in my home. Speaking of plumbing,
yes.
Over the years, I think the best CIO ever met was a guy who went to UVA and he studied environmental science. He couldn't get a job, so he's working as a barista. And someone came in there and said, well, you should come in and help us with this coding. He was coding. I don't know about coding. But he became the CIO of a company because he understood the relationships between different environments in a cloud. And it was perfectly clear to him because he's been doing it in like forests and like jungles and water. And so maybe the ability to critically think in a complex environment, maybe it's environmental science, maybe that's who Salesforce should start hiring, go to different universities and recruit environmental scientists because that's an important skill set. It's so different. We talked about 6 months ago. Well, 5 months ago, I was encouraging people to study code. I'm at a loss. Is it environmental science? Is it critical thinking? Is it English? I mean, it's tough now.
It is very tough. But John, when I was a CIO at 2 o'clock in the morning, when I was up late, maybe because there was an incident, I often thought I needed a degree in psychology.
More than anything.
More than anything.
Yeah, it boils down to dealing with these humans.
Dealing with humans, you still have to understand how relationships work.
Yeah, that's good. Good. Well, I'm sure you'll have a lot of good relationships in the future with those two kids looking at college. Well, John Gilroy says you should study environmental science, but
right.
Mom, I don't want to. It'd be a tough one. Well, unfortunately, Mia, we are running out of time here. I will put a link in the show notes to that IDC report we referenced about success and not success with AI projects. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Mia Jordan, Industry Advisor for Salesforce.